So I really love the Elseworld titles from DC. They don't really print them anymore, and I really think they should. I think they're great for creators just flexing their muscles when they want to try something that's completely just out of the realm of normality for them. And I think outside of the big ones that everyone talks about, one of my favorites is Superman Speeding Bullet. It was released in 1993, which actually makes it as old as me, and now I'm slightly feeling very sad. But it was written by J.M. DeMatteis with art by, and I'm gonna butcher this, Eduardo Barrito. And it's the what if they discuss in this, because an Elseworlds story is always a what if, is what if Superman was Batman? That probably needs some explaining. So, let's just start off with the cover. The cover is just fantastic. It uses the iconic image of Superman flying over the city that appears on Superman #1 in 1939, but instead of a yellow background, the cover reflects Gotham's aesthetics with a gradient of black to grey, and Superman strikes that same pose inside the oval, but his costume is replaced with a modified bat suit with a full mask covering his face instead of a cowl, similar to that of Spider-Man. But the emblem on his chest is just the perfect fusion of Superman's shield and Batman's yellow oval design, with the overall shape being that of the shield, but the bat stretched out inside. I just think it's great. The style, particularly of the cape, feels very inspired by Norm Breyfogle or Todd McFarlane, which I think is perfect given Superman's alien status, because whenever they've done the cape, it always seems to have this otherworldly mind of its own, so applying that to this version of Batman/Superman is just so great to me. But even the book's title box, like right at the bottom, is just a corruption of the original image. It just takes the smooth lines and edges and gives them this jagged horn-like appearance. It's great. But throughout the book we have narration asking what it'd be like if things turned out differently, which is basically just, you know, this is an Elseworld story. We're letting you know from the very first box. So we see a rocket escaping a planet as it explodes, and there's a green glow all around. It's clearly Krypton. The rocket travels through space and crash lands outside Gotham City, where it's discovered by Thomas and Martha Wayne along with their butler Alfred. Inside is the young boy, Kal-El, from the planet Krypton. And through a couple pages styled to look like photo albums, we see the young boy grow as Martha and Thomas decide to adopt him and name him Bruce Wayne. Now you know what I mean by what if Superman was Batman. But Martha dotes on the child, stating to love him as though she had given birth to him. Thomas is intrigued by the boy's abilities and quickly takes him for lessons. And he's always surprised by how agile the boy is. Like, he's fast at picking things up, like even mentally. He's never had any bruises or broken bones. And Thomas is compassionate and kind, but always concerned with testing his mental and physical limits. And he tells Bruce that the cowards and bullies use violence, but you, of all who live, must aspire to something better, something higher. And they're just this great, like, happy family without any worries. But the point of the book is, what if Superman was Batman? And one constant in the mythology of Batman is always the death of the Waynes. So they're leaving the Monarch Theatre, and Bruce shouts about how he just wants to be Zorro. He goes, defender of the weak, righter of wrongs. And there's Martha just jokingly saying, like, last week you wanted to be John Carter, and the week before that you wanted to be Sherlock Holmes. But as they're rounding the corner, they're confronted by a mugger who's demanding their money and Martha's pearls, and during the struggle, both Martha and Thomas are shot and die in front of Bruce, and he's just crying on the floor trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And the mugger turns to Bruce and points the gun right at him. He's literally just saying, like, useless kid, all you're doing is, like, crying in the corner. But as Bruce looks up, he's so full of rage that his powers activate, and he just uses his heat vision to blast the mugger. The mugger runs away in fear with his face burning, and Bruce is just struggling to control what's happening to him. He's got his hands over his eyes and everything. It's later revealed that the mugger he was found dead the next day, with his body almost completely burnt and unrecognizable, but he is, of course, Joe Chill. So young Bruce is found by the police, his eyes wide, and he's covered in his parents' blood, and he's taken home. And after the funeral, Bruce is left in the care of his butler. so he's always got Alfred by his side, but over time he grows and matures, but that guilt and shame for not being able to save his parents stays with him, and it's always at the forefront of his mind. And at the age of 21, Bruce is bitter at the world, he's looking through the papers and he sees nothing but this blood and madness and all the violence and death in the world, and it just makes him angry. Like, as he tosses the paper aside, we see an article informing us that Lex Luthor is coming to Gotham City, because so far there's been far more Batman than Superman in this Superman story. Bruce unlocks this door and reveals that there is a room with hundreds of newspaper clippings tacked to the wall, all relating to acts of senseless murder in the city. And as he looks around, he begins to enter a panic attack. He's completely overwhelmed, and he's just thinking about his parents and how much he just wants to stop all of it. He runs through the mansion and he realizes that people have actually broken in while he's upstairs, and they're holding Alfred hostage. And one of them goes to point the gun at Bruce's face, and in a fit of rage, once again, Bruce knocks them all aside, even throwing one through a window, and as one of them starts firing bullets right at him, they simply bounce off. Bruce crushes the gun in the criminal's hand, and as his heat vision activates, he's terrifying these criminals, and Alfred is just watching on as Bruce breaks down, remembering what he did to the man who killed his parents. In the cave below Wayne Manor, Alfred and Bruce look through Thomas Wayne's journals. As Bruce looks around, testing his supervision, he asks Alfred if he can see his brothers, referring to the bats in the cave, and he tests his flight, and Bruce just flies among them, stating, "There's so much I can do that I've never let myself know I can do." Cut to another location in the city, and a man behind the desk is telling his men just how disappointed he is in them. Based on his purple and green outfit, brief flashes of pale skin, as well as a maniacal laugh, it's clear who he's supposed to be. I mean, obviously it's the Condiment King. Like, of course. He's chewing them out over their inability to break into the mansion. Even with the equipment they were given, one of the men starts ranting about how Wayne is crazy and he put Charlie through a window. In retaliation, they are both strangled on the spot as the figure laughs to himself. 2 months later, the Gotham City Police Department are after a man on the roof, a man named Mick Johnson. He's firing at them from up above, and when a shadowy figure descends upon him, the Batman has arrived. In a flurry of panic, Johnson fires several rounds at Batman, only for them to rebound off. In the final moment of panic, Johnson throws a grenade straight at him, only for Batman to catch it and let it explode between his hands. Batman then throws Johnson over the edge, letting him fall before swooping down and grabbing him and throwing him into the arms of the Gotham City Police Department. The next day, the media is having a field day over the appearance of a cloaked figure flying through the night. Luthor is looking over the paper during a meeting as he attempts to take over Wayne Enterprises. Just as he's about to sign the papers, however, Bruce walks into the meeting telling him it's not gonna happen. Luthor doesn't know who he is at first, meaning that Bruce is not very well known publicly or doesn't have much involvement with the company, which makes me wonder what the hell Bruce has actually been doing all these years. Has he just been sat in that same chair, like, lamenting over his parents? I wouldn't put it past him, but still. But Bruce puts an end to the deal, saying that he plans to be more active in the company's management, and dismisses many of the people in the room. As Bruce leaves, it's clear that Luthor is far from pleased. Bruce stops off at the Gotham Gazette, the city's local paper and one he now owns, and meets the editor-in-chief, Perry White. Because of course. As well as running into the Gazette's newest recruit, Lois Lane, just arrived from the Daily Planet in Metropolis. Around Lois, Bruce becomes a bit of a buffoon, stumbling over his words, knocking into desks, and it's heavily reminiscent of a phrase from Superman's Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek. It's just, if I sound smitten, don't read too much into it, it's because I am. At this point it becomes clear that the narrator is in fact Lois, talking about how she expected Gotham's famous recluse to be a lot of things, but not a shy, stuttering klutz, referring to him as charming, adorable, and disappointing all at the same time. Walking through the streets, Luthor's car pulls up alongside Lois, offering her a ride home. Lois accepts, but Batman is watching from the rooftops, In the car, Lois and Luther talk about how much things have changed. Luther alludes to an accident that has changed him, and he tries to slip his hand up Lois's thigh, which is a deeply uncomfortable panel. But Lois slaps him across the face and is thrown out of his car, 50 blocks away from her apartment. Lois finds herself on the street with a couple of guys catcalling at her. They attempt to attack her just as Batman swoops in to save her. After knocking out the guys, he reaches out a hand to Lois, asking if he can help. After the events of the night, Lois slaps his hands away and asks him to get away. Batman flies away just as the police arrive to help her. Back at the Gazette late at night, Lois is typing up an article based on the man who saved her and the state of violence in the city. Bruce finds her there, and Lois instantly questions his appearance. Bruce says that he's just getting some work done while it's quiet and asks her what's wrong. Lois tells her everything about her night and describes Batman, saying that he has an utter disregard for human life, that he could do so much more for the world with her powers. She compares Batman to Bruce, his idealism and dedication, using his wealth to help others. The pair embrace and kiss in the middle of the office. It seems a little bit rushed given that this is only the second time they've really met, but it's a really short comic, so I can see them just trying to move things along, especially since the next box is about 2 months later. Interesting, this is a nice little twist on Lois preferring the metahuman to the bumbling co-worker, but even with the change in name and identity, Kal-El and Lois still feel like they are made for one another. A few weeks later, a man furiously enters the office of the Gotham Gazette and demands to see Mr. Wayne. As he crashes his way through, we see his purple and green suit, and as he bursts into Bruce's office, we see that the man is Lex Luthor, removing his hat and prosthetic skin to reveal a bleached white face and thick red lipstick. A Jokerized Lex Luthor. Who saw that coming? Honestly. Bruce jumps up to confront him, only to be blasted back by an umbrella gun. Now that feels more like a penguin thing. As Bruce falls out of the window behind him, Joker/Luthor kidnaps Lois and escapes into the night with a small flying machine strapped to his back. As they land on top of a building, complete with devil-horned gargoyles because it's Gotham, Batman flies in and grabs Joker/Luthor, flying him high into the sky as narration talks about how Luthor wants to use chaos and violence to take over the city. As Batman announces to Luthor/Joker that he sees him as an insufferable maggot, and he's going to kill him. Joker/Luthor begins to laugh, telling him that he's just as mad as he is, wouldn't he agree? As Batman screams, yes, he throws Luthor to the ground from high above the sky, as Lois watches with the saddest of expressions on her face. Batman looks down at Lois, seeing her face, and flies down and catches Luthor, telling him that he's going to jail in order to save the city. Batman takes on the horde of tanks and men working for Joker/Luthor that have been trying to tear apart the city during this whole ordeal. When he's finished, he flies back over to Lois, making sure she's okay, and Lois tells him, "What you did tonight, it was different. Not hate, not vindictiveness, not wasting your gifts on terror and brutality with your power. There's so much more you can do. Instead of flexing your muscles, stooping to the level of the very people that you're trying to stop. You can rise above all that. Stand as an example, a symbol of hope." Lois reveals that she knew Batman as Bruce Wayne, and the pair embrace once again and fly off into the night. As the story comes to a close, Lois continues talking about how all of this could have turned out so much differently, how different the man she loved could have been if he had landed somewhere else, even making reference to Superman Red Son, although now that I think about it, I think Red Son came after this, so maybe Red Son was making a reference to this, as well as the main continuity referring to what happened if he was a Kansas farmer. As the words play out, we see a brighter figure fly over the city of Gotham, and the final page reveals a bright new costume for Bruce, and the new name, Superman. In the end, the story is mainly about nature versus nurture, not just for Superman, but Batman as well. Superman is often called the most human of us all, despite his alien origins. This is largely contributed to his upbringing among salt-of-the-earth people on a farm in Kansas. Batman is often the first to bring it up, and often talks about what he would do if he had that kind of power. The book works as a good character study on these ideas, While certainly not the first story to do this for either Batman or Superman, and definitely not the last, Superman's Speeding Bullet is a fine addition to the Elseworld library. And while I've just given you my heavily abridged version of the story, I do recommend you check it out.